Hello everyone, it's me Uncle John. Today I am going to read Magic Tree House number 14, Day of the Dragon King, chapter 1 through chapter 5. Number 1, the bamboo book. Annie peeked into Jack's room. Ready to go to China? She asked. Jack took a deep breath. Sure, he answered. Bring your secret library card, Annie said. I have mine in my pocket. Yep, said Jack. He opened his top dresser drawer and took out a thin wooden card. The letters MN, ML on it shimmered in the light. Jack dropped the card into his backpack. Then he threw in his notebook and a pencil. Let's go, said Annie. Jack pulled on his pack and followed her. What are we in for today? He wondered. Bye, Mom, said Annie as they passed their mom in the kitchen. Where are you going? She asked. China, said Annie. Great, said their mom. She winked at them. Have fun. Fine. Fun, thought Jack. He was afraid that fun wasn't quite the right word. Just wish us luck, he said as he and Annie headed out the front door. Good luck, their mother called. If only she knew we aren't pretending, Jack whispered to Annie. Yeah, said Annie, grinning. Outside, the sun shone brightly. The birds sang, cricket chirped. Jack and Annie walked up the street toward the Frog Creek Woods. I wonder if the weather will be that nice in China, Annie said. I don't know. Remember, Morgan said this would be a very scary adventure. Said Jack, they're always scary, said Annie, but we always meet animals who will help us, or people. True, true, said Jack, but I will miss someone great today, said Annie. Jack smiled. He was starting to feel excited now instead of scared. Let's hurry, he said. They ran into the Frog Creek woods. They slipped between the tall trees until they came to a huge oak. Hello, came a soft voice they knew well. They looked up. Morgan was peering down from the magic tree house. Ready for your next mission as master librarian? She asked. Yes, said Jack and Annie. They grabbed the rope ladder and started up. Are we still going to China? Asked Annie. And they had climbed into the treehouse. Indeed, said Morgan. We're going to ancient China. Here is the title of the story you must find. She held up a long, thin strip of wood. It looked like a ruler, except it had strange writing on it instead of numbers. Long ago, the Chinese discovered how to make paper. It was one of the world's most important discoveries, said Morgan. But you're going to a time earlier than that, to a time when books were written on bamboo strips. Like this one. Wow, said Annie, pointing at the figures on the bamboo. So this is Chinese writing. Yes, said Morgan. Just as we have letters, Chinese writing is made up of many characters. Each one stands for a different thing or idea. These characters are the title of an ancient Chinese legend. You must find the first writing of the legend before the Imperial Library is destroyed. Hurry, let's go, said Annie. Wait, we need our research book, said Jack. Yes, you do, said Morgan. From the folds of her robe, she pulled out a book. On the cover was the title, The Time of the First Emperor. Morgan handed the book to Jack. This research book will guide you, she said, but remember, in your darkest hour, only the old legend can save you. But we have to find it first, said Annie. Exactly, said Morgan. She handed Jack the bamboo strip, and he slipped it into his pack. Jack pushed his glasses into place, then pointed at the cover of the research book. I wish we could go there, he said. The wind started to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still, absolutely still. Chapter 2. The the go the go where? Cowherd. Oh wow, Annie said, these clothes feel so soft and I have a pocket for my secret library card. Jack opened his eyes. The clothes had magically changed. They no longer wore jeans, t-shirts, and sneakers. Instead, they had baggy pants, loose shirts, straw shoes, and round hat. And his shirt had a pocket in it. Jack saw that his backpack had become a rough cloth sack. Inside was his research book. his notebook, his library card, and the bamboo strip. Cows, said Annie, looking out the window. Jack looked out too. The tree house had landed in a lone tree in a sunny field. Cows grazed, and a young man stood watching over them. At the edge of the field was a farmhouse. Beyond the house was a walled city. It looked so peaceful, said Annie. You can never be sure, said Jack. Remember Pompeii looked peaceful before the volcano went off. Oh yeah, said Annie. Let's see what the book says, said Jack. He reached in the sack and pulled out the china book. He opened it and read aloud. Over 2,000 years ago, China was ruled by its first emperor. Because he chose the dragon to be his symbol, he was called the Dragon King in China. Dragons are seen as brave and powerful creatures. Dragon King. That sounds a little scary, said Jack. I like his outfit though, said Annie. Next to the writing was a picture. It showed a man wearing a rich flowing robe with wide sleeves. He also wore a tall hat with beads hanging from it. Jack pulled out his notebook and wrote, the first emperor called Dragon King. The book we need must be in the Dragon King's library, said Annie. I bet his palace is in that city. Jack looked up. Right, he said. That's how to get there. He pointed across the field to a dirt road that led to the walled city. The plan, said Annie. She climbed out of the treehouse and started down the rope ladder. Jack threw the china book and his notebook into his sack. He slung the sack over his shoulder and followed Annie. When they reached the ground, they started through the field. Look, that guy is waving at us, said Annie. The man tending the cows was shouting and waving. He started running. He told them, uh-oh, what's he want? What's he want? Said Jack. A moment later, the man stood in the path. He was young and handsome with a kind face. Can you do me a great favor? He asked. I would be most grateful. Of course, said Annie. Give a message to the silk weaver. You will see her at the farmhouse, said the young man. Tell her to meet me here at twilight. Sure, no problem, said Annie. The young man smiled. Thank you, he said. Then he started to leave. Wait, excuse me, said Jack. Do you know where we can find the Imperial Library? A look of horror crossed the man's kind face. Why, he whispered. Oh, I just wondered, said Jack. The young man shook his head. Beware of the Dragon King, he said. Whatever you do, beware. Then he turned and ran back to his cow. Oh man, whispered Jack. Now we know one thing for sure. What? Asked Annie. This place is not as peaceful as it seems, Jack said. Chapter 3, The Silk Weaver. Jack and Annie kept walking across the pasture toward the road. Annie stopped and they near the farmhouse. We have to find the silk weaver and give her the message. She said, let's do that on our way back, said Jack. I'm worried about finding the Imperial Library. What if we don't have time? Said Annie. We promised, and he was so nice. Jack sighed. Okay, he said, but let's find her fast. Remember to keep your head down so no one will notice us. Jack and Annie bowed their heads as they headed toward the house. As they got closer, Jack picked out from under his hat. An ox pulled a cart filled with hay. Men hoed the ground. Women pushed wheelbarrows piled high with grain. There, said Annie. She pointed to an open porch where a young woman was weaving cloth on a loom. That must be her. Annie ran to the silk weaver. Jack looked around to see if anyone was watching. Luckily, all the farm workers seemed too busy to notice anything. Still looking around carefully, Jack walked toward the porch. Annie was already talking to the silk weaver. What did he say? The young woman asked. Her voice was soft but strong. Her dark eyes glowed with happiness. He said you should meet him in the field at twilight, said Annie. He's so handsome. Yes, he is. The silk weaver gave Annie a shy smile. Then she reached down to a basket near her loom and picked up a ball of yellow thread. It was very brave of you to bring the message, she said. Please accept this silk thread as my thank you. She handed Annie the ball of silk. It is beautiful, said Annie. Feel. She handed it to Jack. The thread was smooth and soft. How do you make silk? Said Jack. It's made from the cocoons of silkworms, said the weaver. Really, worms? That's neat, said Jack. Let me write that down. He reached into his sack. Please don't, said the workweaver. The making of silk is China's most valuable secret. Anyone who steals the secret will be arrested. The Dragon King will have him put to death. Oops, said Jack. He dropped the ball of silk into his sack. I think you must leave quickly, whispered the workweaver. You've been seen. Jack looked over his shoulder. A man was pointing at them. Let's go, he said. Bye, said Annie. Good luck on your day. Thank you, the silk weaver said. Come on, said Jack. They hurried away from the silk weaver. Stop, someone shouted. Run, said Annie. Chapter 4. The Great Wall. Jack and Annie ran around the farmhouse. At the back was an ox cart, filled with bags of grain. There was no one in sight. The shouting behind them got louder. Jack and Annie looked at each other, then dived into the back of the wooden cart. They buried themselves in the middle of the bags of grain. Jack's heart pounded as the shouts came closer. He held his breath and waited for the people to leave. Suddenly the cart lurched forward. Someone was driving them away. Jack and Annie picked over the bag. Jack saw the back of the driver. He was calmly steering the ox cart over the dirt road. They were on their way to the walled city. Jack and Annie ducked down again. This is great, whispered Annie. All we have to do is jump out when we get into the city. Yep, Jack said softly. Then we'll find the Imperial Library, find the book, get back to the Magic Tree House. No problem, whispered Annie. Whoa, the car slowly came to a halt. Jack held his breath. Your voices and the heavy trampling of feet, lots of feet. And Annie peeked out. Oh man, he whispered. Long line of men was crossing the road in front of the cart. They carried axes, shovels, and hoes. The guards marched alongside them. Let's find out what's happening, said Jack. He reached into his sack and pulled out a china book. Pushing his glasses into place, he found the picture of the workers. He read. The Dragon King forced many of his subjects to start building a wall to protect China from invaders. Later, emperors made the wall even longer. Finally, it stretched 3,700 miles along China's border. The Great Wall of China is the longest structure ever built. Wow, the Great Wall of China, said Jack. I've heard of that, said Annie. Who hasn't, said Jack. Those guys are going to work on it right now. Just then, someone grabbed Jack and Annie. They looked up. It was the driver of the car. Who are you? He asked angrily. Jack didn't know what to say. The man's gaze fell on the open book. In Jack's hand, his mouth dropped open. He let go of Jack and Annie. Slowly, he reached out and touched the book. He looked back at Jack and Annie with wide eyes. What is this? He said. Chapter 5, The Scholar. It's a book from our country, said Jack. Your books are made of bamboo, but ours are made of paper. Actually, your country invented paper, but later, in the future. The man looked confused. Never mind. It's for reading, it's for learning about faraway places. The man stared at them. Tears filled his eyes. What's wrong? Annie asked softly. I love reading and learning, he said. So do I, said Jack. The man smiled. You don't understand. I'm dressed as a farmer, he said, but in truth, I'm a scholar. What's a scholar? We are great readers, learners, and writers, he said. We have long been the most honored citizens in China. The scholar's smile faded. But now scholars are in danger, he said, and many of us have gone into hiding. Why? Said Jack. The Dragon King is afraid of the power of our books and learning, said the scholar. He wants people to think only what he wants them to think. Any day he may order the burning of the books. Annie gasped. Does that mean what I think it means? Said Jack. Scholar nodded. All the books in the Imperial Library will be burned, he said. That's rotten, said Annie. Indeed, it is. The scholar said quietly, listen, we have a mission to get a book from the library. Said Jack, who are you? Asked the scholar. Show him, said Annie. She reached into a shirt pocket as Jack reached into his sack. They brought out the secret library card. The letters just shimmered in the sunlight. Scholar's mouth dropped open again. You are master librarians, he said. I have never met one so honored who was so young. He bowed to show his respect. Thank you, said Jack and Annie. They bowed back to him. How can I help you? Asked the scholar. We need to go to the Imperial Library and find this book, said Jack. He held out Morgan's bamboo strip to the scholar. We'll go to the Imperial Library, said the scholar. As for the story, I know it well. It's a true one, written not long ago. But I warn you, we'll be in great danger. We know, said Annie. The scholar smiled. I'm happy to be doing something I believe in again, said the scholar. Let us go. They all climbed into the front of the cart. The long line of wall builders was marching in the distance. As the oxen started forward, the scholar turned to Jack and Annie. Where are you from? He asked. Frog Creek, Pennsylvania, said Annie. I have never heard of it, says the scholar. Do they have a library there? Oh, sure. There is a library in every town, said. In fact, there are probably thousands of libraries in our country and millions of books. No one burns them, right? Everyone gets to go to school to learn to read them. The scholar stared at him and shook his head. It sounds like paradise, he said. The end.